My parents spent days clearing out my house while I was hospitalized, and I had no idea what they were really planning. I thought I was just recovering from a severe health scare that landed me in the hospital for a week. I never expected to come home and find my own life quietly erased from my house. My parents were inside my place without asking me, moving my things into boxes like it was completely normal. At first, I genuinely thought I was hallucinating from the medication. But then I saw my mother labeling boxes with my name and my sister's initials, and my father avoided eye contact like he had already decided I shouldn't question it. I asked them what was going on, still weak from the hospital bed I had just left. My mother said they were helping me get organized while I recovered. But nothing about it felt like help. It felt like my life was being redistributed without my consent. And the worst part was how calm they were while doing it, like this was something they had planned long before I got sick. I kept telling myself there had to be a reasonable explanation, but every room I walked into told a different story. My bedroom drawers were half empty. My documents were piled into a folder I didn't recognize. Even small personal things like photos and gifts were already missing from shelves. I asked where my stuff was going. My father said it was just temporary storage, but he couldn't explain why my sister's name was on half the boxes. That was the first moment I felt a real spike of panic, because my sister doesn't live with me. She has her own place across town, and she hadn't been involved in any of this conversation at all. I tried calling her immediately, but she didn't answer. Instead, I got a text from her saying she would talk later when things settle. That made my stomach drop even more because it sounded rehearsed. I sat down on my couch, still wearing hospital discharge clothes. My body was weak, but my mind was suddenly racing. I asked my parents again why they were in my house. My mother finally said it out loud in a tone that felt too casual. She said they were preparing things in case I needed long-term care support. That sentence didn't make sense to me at first. I wasn't dying. I wasn't even told I needed long-term care. I was discharged with instructions for rest and follow-up visits. So why were they acting like my life was being restructured? I asked her directly if she thought I wasn't coming back to normal life. She hesitated just long enough for me to notice. Then she said, "We're just being practical." That word stuck in my head like a warning sign, practical, as if my belongings were just assets to be sorted. My father then added that bills had been stressful lately. That was the first time money entered the conversation. I didn't even know they were involved in my finances. I told them my bills were my responsibility. My mother said I shouldn't be dealing with that right now anyway. But I noticed she avoided saying who would be dealing with it instead. I got up too quickly and felt dizzy from the hospital medications. My father tried to steady me, but I pulled away, because suddenly even physical contact felt like control. I walked into the kitchen and saw something that made everything worse. My mail had been opened and stacked into neat piles. Some envelopes were marked "Urgent Family Review" in my father's handwriting. That phrase made me feel like I was losing grip on reality. I demanded they stop touching my mail. My mother said they were only checking important notices. I asked who gave them permission. She said, "We're your parents." That wasn't an answer. That was an assumption of authority. And in that moment, I realized they weren't waiting for my approval at all. They were already acting as if it didn't matter. I started checking the boxes myself. Inside one, I found my laptop and external drives wrapped in towels. I asked why those were packed. My father said they were safer at their house. That was the first direct contradiction I couldn't ignore, because nothing about this was about safety. It was about control disguised as concern. I sat back down because my head was spinning again. I asked them how long this had been planned. My mother said it wasn't planned. She immediately added that they noticed signs during my hospitalization. I asked what signs. She said I had been overwhelmed with responsibilities for too long. That sounded like they had rewritten my life story while I was unconscious in a hospital bed. I told them I didn't want anything moved or packed. My father said it was already halfway done. That was the moment I realized I was not part of the decision anymore. I asked where my sister fit into all this. My mother finally looked at me directly, and she said, "She's going to help you stabilize." That sentence made no sense in isolation, so I asked her to explain what she meant. She avoided answering and instead said my sister was more settled right now. I asked if they were planning for me to live somewhere else. My father said nothing for a long time. That silence was louder than any answer. Then he finally said I should consider options. Options, like my home was a negotiable space. I stood up again, this time more steadily. I told them to stop packing immediately. My mother looked offended, not guilty. She said I was being ungrateful after everything they were doing. That flipped something in me emotionally because I hadn't asked for any of this. I had asked for recovery time, not restructuring. I walked into my bedroom and locked the door for a moment. I needed air and clarity, but through the door I heard them continuing anyway, boxes sliding, drawers opening, quiet, efficient movement like they had done it before. I realized then this wasn't a spontaneous reaction to my illness. This was practiced behavior, which meant they had done it mentally long before I ever got sick. I came back out and demanded honesty. My mother finally sighed like she was tired of me resisting. She said they had been discussing future arrangements for months. I asked what future arrangements meant. She said if anything happened to me, things needed to be organized properly. I asked why they assumed something would happen to me. She said that wasn't what she meant, but she didn't correct it clearly either. My father finally admitted something small but important. He said they had been worried about my ability to maintain everything alone. That hit harder than I expected because it wasn't about illness anymore. It was about competence. I asked if they thought I couldn't handle my own life. My mother said not couldn't, just shouldn't have to. That sounded like a soft way of saying I wasn't trusted. I asked again why my sister's name was on everything. That time, my mother didn't avoid it. She said my sister was more stable financially and emotionally. I felt a sharp drop in my chest because that wasn't a medical judgment, that was a ranking. My father added that they thought it would be easier for everyone if she helped manage things. Manage things, not support me. Manage me. I asked if this meant they were planning to give her control of my house. Neither of them denied it quickly. That delay told me everything I needed. I felt a mix of anger and disbelief rising, but I was still too weak to fully process it. I asked if they had told my sister she was taking over anything. My mother said she agreed to help. That phrasing mattered because it wasn't my sister deciding. It was my parents deciding for her too. I called my sister again. This time she answered. Her voice sounded careful, too careful. I asked her directly what was going on. She paused before answering. Then she said, "Mom and Dad think it's better this way." That wasn't an explanation. It was confirmation of alignment. I asked her if she was moving into my house. She said not exactly. That phrase made everything worse because it meant there was a version of events she wasn't saying out loud. I asked her to be honest with me. She finally admitted she had been told I might need extended support at home. Support at home, not recovery, not assistance. Control disguised as care. I ended the call because my hands were shaking. When I turned back, my mother was watching me carefully, like she was assessing whether I was stable enough to continue the conversation. That made me feel something break internally. I asked her if they thought I was incapable. She said they thought I was overwhelmed. But overwhelmed had clearly become their justification for replacement. I asked them to leave my house. My father said they were not finished organizing. That was the first time I realized they weren't asking permission at all. They were waiting for me to accept it. I told them I didn't accept it. My mother looked disappointed more than anything else. She said I was making recovery harder than it needed to be. That sentence made me realize how they were reframing everything I said. My disagreement became a symptom. My resistance became illness. I suddenly felt trapped in their version of reality, so I started checking everything they had packed. Inside one box, I found my financial documents, bank statements, insurance papers, all grouped together. I asked why those were separated. My father said it was for review. That word again. Review meant evaluation. Evaluation meant judgment, and judgment meant decisions made without me. I asked if they were trying to take over my finances. My mother said they were trying to prevent mistakes. That was when I realized this wasn't about my hospitalization anymore. It was about long-term authority over my independence, and my illness had just been the opening they needed. I sat down again because my energy was fading, but my mind was sharper now. I asked them directly what they had already decided. My mother finally admitted it in fragments. They thought I should transition responsibilities gradually, that my sister would co-manage things, that my house might be partially reassigned if I needed care support. Each phrase was softer than the last, but together they formed something undeniable. They were reassigning my life. I asked why I wasn't included in any of these decisions. My father said they didn't want to stress me while I was sick. That answer no longer felt protective. It felt strategic. I asked if they understood how this looked from my perspective. My mother said I was reading it too emotionally. That made me realize they were not going to see this as betrayal. They saw it as management. I told them again to stop packing. This time I was louder. My voice echoed through my own house like it didn't belong to me anymore. My mother finally stopped moving, but she said they would finish later, as if my refusal was temporary. I realized then the real issue wasn't just what they had done. It was that they believed they still had the right to continue. I asked my sister to come over. She arrived within an hour. When she walked in, she immediately avoided looking at the boxes. That told me she had already seen them before. My mother greeted her like she was arriving to confirm a plan. My sister didn't correct her. That silence confirmed what I feared. She wasn't being brought into a misunderstanding. She was part of a structure already built around me. I asked her when she first heard about any of this. She admitted it started while I was still in the hospital. My stomach sank again because I was unconscious while my life was being discussed. She said my parents were worried about me living alone after discharge, that I might not recover smoothly. I asked if she believed that. She hesitated. Then she said she believed I needed support. Support was becoming the most dangerous word in my family because it kept replacing autonomy. I asked her if she wanted my house. She immediately said no, but then she added that it made sense for her to help manage it temporarily. Temporary, another soft word covering a permanent shift. I asked what temporarily meant. She couldn't define it. My mother stepped in and said I should be grateful they were stepping in. That word again, grateful, as if I was receiving something instead of losing something. I asked them all to sit down. I needed clarity in one place, so I asked a simple question. What exactly did they think was going to happen to me? The room went quiet for a long moment. Then my father finally said it. They thought I would need long recovery time and ongoing support, possibly months, maybe longer, and during that time they believed my house should not sit idle or unmanaged. That was the core truth. They weren't reacting to my illness. They were reorganizing my life around their assumption of decline. I asked if they had considered asking me instead of deciding for me. My mother said they didn't want to burden me with logistics. But logistics was my entire life they were dividing. I realized something then that shifted everything. They weren't trying to hurt me intentionally, but they also weren't willing to stop. I stood up slowly. I told them I would be managing my own recovery and my own home. My mother looked genuinely confused, like that option hadn't been considered valid. My father said they would step back gradually. But even that phrasing assumed they still had a role to step back from. I told them the decision wasn't gradual, it was immediate. I asked them to leave my house and stop moving my things. This time they finally did. After they left, the house felt different, not empty, but rearranged in a way that had nothing to do with space. I walked through each room slowly. Every missing object felt like a sentence I hadn't been allowed to finish. I realized they had been preparing a version of my life where I was less in control than I ever imagined. Later that night, my sister texted me again. She said she didn't realize how it would feel from my side, and that maybe they had all moved too fast. But she also said she didn't want to create conflict with our parents. That last part mattered more than the apology, because it showed where the real alignment was. I sat alone in my house, still recovering, still processing, and I understood something painful. No one had seen me as fully capable in that moment, not my parents, not even my sister. They saw a version of me that needed management, and once that version existed in their minds, my actual voice stopped mattering. The house was mine again physically, but something in the family structure had already shifted. And I could feel that even if they stepped back, they would never fully unsee the version of me they created while I was in that hospital bed.